Okay, where are my feminine ladies at? Do I have any other girls on this platform that love to just dress like a Disney princess every single day? Like, I don't care if I'm going to Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, like, I'm always going to be full glammed in my puff sleeve little floral mini dress. This is how I dress. Accept me, love me. I am never changing for anyone, but does anybody else feel like sometimes you just don't fit in, or you don't fit in this world? Like, everyone's just so cool and so like chic and trendy, and here you are in this like floral puff sleeve mini dress. Give me all the vintage florals like my great grandmother Mary's couch. I mean, I don't know if it's just me. Is anyone else on here just obsessed with puff sleeve florals, corsets? Just give me all like the vintage Love Shack fancy vibes. I feel like I just don't fit in, or I'm like from the wrong time period, or I like time traveled or something. Anyone else, comment.
Deborah Tannen's There Is No Unmarked Woman argues that every choice a woman makes about herself is a marked action, as there is no action viewed as neutral, which does not position some sort of message about her. It is no surprise, then, that purchasing is used as a way of signaling personality and other aspects of one's identity. It also shouldn't come as a surprise that the decline in religion, which often works as a major aspect of identity, has been replaced with consumerism. In tandem with America's increasingly hyper-individualist culture and the need for bread and circuses to make it easier to bear the slow decline of the American dream, these forces have led to a supersized fashion industry moving at breakneck speeds, with no signs of slowing down. When people get distracted by artificial trends that appear to be life-changing, they tend to ignore their actual reality. This makes them less likely to take real action to bring about change.
I am convinced that the rise of consumerism and the extreme end in which we live now has so detrimentally impacted our mental health. Anxiety on the rise, depression on the rise, lack of contentment just is the standard across the board, right? Why do I say that? Because the backbone of consumerism, what drives purchasing over and over again, is companies or people telling you that you have a lack, a problem, or an insecurity that their product or service can help you fix. When I stop and reflect on that, I want so much less. It benefits them to have you be obsessing, comparing, and miserable with yourself so that you will consume goods and continue to consume goods, not a one-time purchase. And this is in the mental health field too.
Moreover, the convenience of buying, consuming, and acquiring goods is a barrier to leaving the current system. After all, how can one enact lasting change without challenging the current system as it is? This is the same logic which positions prostitution or makeup as empowering, without seeming to realize that if it really was, it wouldn't be culturally accepted. Fast fashion in particular has benefited from this way of thinking, as well as the widespread belief that empowerment relies only on personal confidence instead of political or economic power. Additionally, association with the female sex has in turn led fashion to be viewed as a frivolous topic. As a result, most criticism of fashion in the makeup industry remains surface level, such as regarding the lack of inclusive sizes or colors, rather than of the exploitative nature of the industry itself, or of the ways in which it works against women's liberation. In the West, over the past 100 years, hemlines and sleeves have shortened, in part due to the increasing participation of women in the public sphere. Less clothing is often tied to the perception of liberation as a result, with cultures that emphasize modesty being presented as backwards and less progressive. However, this way of thought ignores that the pressure in the West has changed in turn to encourage women to show more skin, and often punishes and judges women who choose to show less. The skin gap, a term coined by Allison Josephs on her blog Jew in the City, refers to the difference in the amount of skin men and women are expected to show in the same social setting. Take, for example, the beach.
Okay, I've got beef. Okay, so this is about men's bathing suits versus women's bathing suits. And I know I can't be the only woman that feels this way. So why is it that men get to wear a nice comfortable t-shirt and then they get these long shorts that look, when you bend over, nothing is sticking out, and you can raise your arms and you can chase your kids, and look, nothing's falling out. But then you get the women. Now, mind you, this is modest by comparison to other women's bathing suits, but still, this is what we're given. So I'm a big girl. These are not small. I have to bend over, and I'm like, I just don't let the girl fall out. And then I gotta do this, and there's way too much. Nobody back here needs to see all of what you're gonna see when I have to bend over to get my kids, or when I'm doing this or that, or reaching or this. I'm afraid they're gonna fall out, and I'm afraid this is not all covered the way that it should be. Now, I just want a coverage bathing suit that holds my girls and keeps my junk where it belongs. Inside. Am I alone? I mean, in 90% of the time, the men are standing in the pool just like this. Let me just hang out. It doesn't matter that I have long shorts on and I could be chasing kids and my shit's not gonna fall out. I'm not asking too much, am I?
Male swimsuits cover from waist to knee, while female swimsuits cover the same, if not less, skin than underwear. In turn, this clothing requires shaving of the bikini line, legs, and underarms, and often requires body monitoring to ensure that nothing falls out of place while active.
Just watch. New TikTok challenge. Any man claiming to be like 5'9" to 6 feet tall, you have to stand next to me. See, I'm 5'10", slouching. So I'll go put on some heels. We can play around. I just want to see. It's just for fun. These trends don't exist for men. And I'm going to stop you right there if you're going to try to dispute me on that fact, because maybe there are some that exist for men, but for every one that exists for a man, there's about 50 that exist for women. So sit down. Oh, it's just for fun. You all find something wrong with everything. If you don't like it, just keep scrolling. No, I am not going to do that. I am not going to let you continue to break women into pieces. Women aren't objects. And body checking trends like this that pop up fucking weekly on this app just add to the pile of insecurities that are thrown on all of us from the moment that we are born, and perpetuate this status quo that women's primary contribution is their appearance. That if you don't fit within that incredibly narrow scope, you are not worthy. And truly, the only people that really participate in these trends are like pick-me-ass women and their grody, grubby, crusty, musty, dusty-ass boyfriends that make $40,000 a year and think that I give a shit about their opinion. I'm tired of it. I am so fucking done. If you are a woman watching this, especially a young woman, and these trends make you feel bad about how you look, let me stop you right there. You are more than your waist size, or your butt, or your legs, or your lips, or whatever body part we're picking apart on a woman today. And you do not have to reduce yourself to the level of the type of people that create videos like this. The holy skid mark underwear having, Joe Rogan loving, libertarian, peaked in high school men, and they're not like other girls' girlfriend. Fuck these trends.
This is especially obvious in sports, wherein female athletes are forced to wear much more revealing clothing than men playing the same sport, illustrating how the objectification of women encourages the appearance of women over their performance. The negative impact of revealing clothing on performance has been illustrated on many studies, one of the most cited being conducted by Wiseman and Singh, where they asked male and female participants to complete a series of math problems while wearing either a swimsuit or a sweater. The researchers found that women who wore swimsuits tended to perform more poorly on the math problems than women who wore sweaters, while the clothing worn by men had no significant impact on their performance. The difference in expectation is even applicable to children, as girls' clothing are significantly smaller than boys'. Girls have a 65% shorter inseam on shorts. Their shirts are 1 to 3 inches shorter, sleeves 36% shorter, and length 8% shorter than that of boys. As Peggy Ornstein asks, why does little girls' clothing need to be tighter, shorter, and more constricting than boys'? Is it easier to move in such clothes? Play in them? Run in them? What is it grooming girls to wear later? How is it grooming them to perceive themselves? This trend is only broken with the exception of women who do not meet conventional beauty standards, such as older or larger women, which can be viewed in the way that clothes are marketed and sold to these demographics. If shorter hemlines are so empowering, why are they so-called undesirable women encouraged to cover up? The objectification and sexualization of women is only encouraged in the group society considers to be desirable. So pray tell why children face the same fashion trends as young women. Quite simply, we live in a pedophilic and misogynistic society which encourages both the sexualization and objectification of women and girls in order to better serve male interests. One influential framework for understanding objectification was proposed by feminist philosopher Martha Nussbaum, who identified 7 distinct forms. Instrumentality, treating a person as a tool for one's own purposes. Denial of autonomy, denying a person's autonomy or agency, treating them as lacking in self-determination or self-control. Inertness, treating a person as lacking in activity, as if they were passive and lifeless. Fungibility, treating a person as interchangeable with others, as if they had no unique characteristics or qualities. Violability, treating a person as lacking in boundary, integrity, or inviolability, as if they were being open to violation or used without their consent. Ownership, treating a person as if they were owned by another, as if they were a piece of property or possession. Denial of subjectivity, denying a person's subjectivity or humanity, treating them as if they were an object or a thing, rather than a person with feelings, thoughts, and desires. Fashion, which encourages body monitoring and constant focus on appearance, negatively impacts female performance in many ways. Clothing which restricts and is meant to be decorative instead of functional plays into inertness by presenting women as being objects for public consumption. Fungibility, as it denies originality through the pressure of trends and lack of true personal expression. Violability, as clothing is often viewed as an invitation to harassment. And denial of subjectivity, as participating in fashion trends marks a woman and is often interpreted as a statement of her behavior or beliefs. That clothes are meant to both sexualize and objectify tie together. Regardless of if one views an article of clothing as sexualizing, clothing which draws focus to specific parts of the body in an effort to appear attractive still serve this purpose. It is important to note that regardless of if women view the clothing as sexual, men can and will still sexualize you for it. As Margaret Atwood wrote in The Robber Bride, male fantasies, is everything run by male fantasies. Up on a pedestal or down on your knees, it's all male fantasy. That you're strong enough to take what they dish out, or else too weak to do anything about it. Even pretending that you aren't catering to male fantasies is a male fantasy. Pretending you're unseen, pretending you have a life of your own, that you can wash your feet and comb your hair unconscious of the ever-present watcher peering through the keyhole in your own head if nowhere else. You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. It is for this reason that modest clothing can play into female oppression as well. Take, for example, religious headdresses or modesty concerns, evident in all religions, wherein women are pressured or judged that they do not cover themselves to male satisfaction. This is often presented as a choice, but how can it be so if women do not comply and face violence, familial pressure, or are told they will go to hell for not doing so? In both modest and immodest cultures, women are sexualized and told that their appearance is to blame for male violence, and yet made to sell male desires either by hiding so-called provocative body parts or by revealing them for public consumption. If one is actively choosing clothing in an effort to be attractive, regardless of whom they wish to be attractive to, it's important to note that the cultural practice of sexual objectification leads to self-objectification, which turns into self-surveillance, causing psychological consequences and mental health risks in victims. Sexual objectification means that women are widely seen as sex objects for male sexual pleasure. This objectification occurs in 2 areas: interpersonal or social encounters and media exposure. Interpersonal or social encounters include catcalls, checking out/staring at or gazing at women's bodies, sexual comments, and harassment. Have you ever noticed that women in winter or late fall dressed in thin or skimpy outfits waiting outside, seemingly unaware of the low temperature? The more women monitor their appearance, they increasingly lose access to their own physical experiences. In contrast, women low in self-objectification showed a positive and intuitive relationship between their clothing and feeling cold. The more skin they exposed, the colder they felt. Self-objectification can conversely lead a woman to stop doing many things, such as meeting with friends, dating, going to work or school, which may lead to a point where she is not capable of enjoying her life. Calagro, Tansofdam, and Thompson call this opting out. They found that 67% of women aged 15 to 64 years old withdraw from life-engaging, life-sustaining activities because they feel bad about their appearance. The same is not true for men. Vogue's 2019 states that, generally speaking, compared to women, men are less dissatisfied with their own body and consider themselves to be better looking and less overweight. Men and women value and view themselves differently, which plays a part in how fashion affects one's lived experience. For example, Franzoy 1995 writes that there are 2 basic ways of thinking about one's body that have a particular relevance to a discussion of gender differences and body esteem. One way is to view the body as an object of discrete parts that others aesthetically evaluate, and the other is to conceptualize it as a dynamic process where function is of greater consequence. The vast majority of people tend to view the female form in terms of its form rather than function, and it is the aspect of the physical self that influences people's first impressions and forms the basis for the physical attractiveness stereotype. Meanwhile, men, regardless of what they wear, tend to be viewed for their functionality. This is especially obvious in how men and women dress in Hollywood and higher income contexts. If lipstick, eyeliner, and a Gucci bag were so empowering, then you would see presidents, CEOs, and male movie stars dressing in similarly revealing clothing as their female counterparts. However, this is not the case, as rich and powerful women are still subject to degradation in order to boost the male ego, while men are able to dress comfortably. Take, for example, how female singers dress in comparison to male singers. Even in terms of general appearance, there is a higher standard for women than men. There are few unattractive singers in Hollywood, despite singing ability having no correlation to appearance. The hypersexualization of the rich and famous is often disabling and crippling in that it heavily restricts movement in a manner that is not conducive to labor. As Brown Miller writes, each device of beautification restricted her freedom and weakened her strength. Each provided a feminine obstacle course through which she endeavored to move with artificial grace. The hobbling and disabling nature of femininity reflects status, both in the women that perform it and the men who pair with these women. Femininity itself is tied inextricably to economic systems as it originated in the rarefied atmosphere of a decadent upper class, where the physical labor of women was not required, and it became an enviable symbol of luxury, leisure, and refinement. This hypersexualization is mimicked by the less wealthy as designs are quickly and cheaply reproduced, trickling down from high fashion into low. This fashionable trickle-down effect has blurred the history of fashion as a program for the continued maintenance of class. George Simmel wrote that the classified nature of fashion is not incidental, but central to its formal structure. Not only are fashions always class for Simmel, but the appropriation of high fashion by lower socioeconomic classes drives the cyclical nature of the recreation of continuous re-individuation by means of the upper class. In other words, as the lower classes start to mimic these trends, the upper classes create new ones to diversify from them, and to continue to illustrate differences in wealth. Fashion itself relies not only on the continued objectification and conformance to male expectations of beauty and femininity, but on the exploitation of women who create these pieces. Shein and other low-cost brands often serve to hurry the cycle of fashion onward by presenting cheap alternatives to high-cost pieces. They're able to do so by exploiting women and children in developing countries. In one factory, Channel 4 found that workers receive a base salary of 4,000 yuan per month, roughly $556, to make 500 pieces of clothing per day, and that their first month's pay is withheld from them. In another factory, workers receive the equivalent of 4 cents per item. Workers in both factories were working up to 18-hour days and were given only 1 day off a month. In one factory, the outlet found women washing their hair during lunch breaks, and workers were penalized 2/3 of their daily wage if they made a mistake on a clothing item. Often, people begin working in these factories underage as, according to a survey on mills in India, 60% of the employees were under the age of 18 when they started working. Working in these factories is often dangerous as well as there is a lack of oversight, which leads to the consumption of harmful chemicals and even building collapses, such as what occurred in 2013, where over 1,000 garment employees in Bangladesh lost their lives while at work as a result of the collapse of the Rana Plaza factory. The rise in fast fashion, wherein people are buying more clothes for less money and wearing them less times, only contributes to the cycle of poverty and exploitation, as well as the environmental impact of wasteful production. If one claims to care for the welfare of women, especially those in impoverished countries, participating in this culture is both contradictory and counterproductive to women's liberation. Still, with the presentation of appearance as being synonymous with personality, this is often a difficult behavior to break. As Rain Fisher writes, it's become very common for women online to express their identities through an artfully curated list of the things they consume or aspire to consume. And because young women are conditioned to believe that their identities are defined most entirely by their neuroses, these roundups of cultural trends and authors du jour often implicitly serve to strategically signal one's mental illnesses to the public. One girl in your TikTok feed might be a self-described Joan Didion / Eve Babbitt / Marlboro Red / straight-cut Levi's Fleabag girl. This means she has depression. Another will call herself a baby doll dress, Sylvia Plath, Red Scare, Miu Miu, Lana Del Rey girl, eating disorder. Or a green juice, claw clip, Emma Chamberlain, yoga mat podgross girl, no different eating disorder. The aesthetics of consumption have, in turn, become a conduit to make the self more easily consumable. Your existence as a type of girl has almost nothing to do with whether you actually read Joan Didion or wear a Miu Miu, and everything to do with whether you want to be seen as the type of person who would. With identities so linked to appearance, to performance for others, and the constant surveillance provided by the existence of social media and smartphones, it is a difficult task to apply feminism to one's fashion choices. With makeup or shaving, the answer is clear: to stop. In clothing, it is less so. Additionally, there is a time and cost investment in this endeavor. Few of us can afford to wholesale throw out our closets and start again. Instead, I suggest shopping mindfully for new additions, as well as weeding out clothes that are especially obstructive. When you go shopping, ask yourself, is it comfortable? Does the fabric itch or snag? Does it make you overly aware of any part of your body or require additional restrictive clothing to look good? Does it hinder your ability to move? Can you walk, run, jump, bend over as you would normally? Do you have to move in a specific manner to avoid indecency or malfunction? Is it meant to make you ornamental or a sex object? Clothing doesn't have to be long, modest, or baggy, but does the clothing serve the purpose of sexualizing you, or place emphasis on being viewed rather than actively participating in life? When it comes to feminine clothes in particular, it's especially important to be critical of what we consume. Amy Lee Zimmer asked, how can a feminine woman support feminist ideals when her very habituous is the performative embodiment and reification of male desire, oppression, and the resulting normative ideals of beauty, which continue both to subject and to subjugate? To which I suggest remaining steadfast in balancing function with form. A dress or skirt is not inherently bad or objectifying, or at least not any more so than any action a woman can take. The important thing is to be physically comfortable and not restricted. One should not be consumed of how she looks or is perceived due to her outfit. In conclusion, while fashion and clothing choices may seem like a small aspect of our lives, they have a significant impact on our self-image and how we present ourselves to the world. The pervasive cultural pressure to conform to beauty standards and the performative aspects of femininity can be detrimental to women's liberation, particularly in impoverished countries. However, by being mindful of our clothing choices and choosing comfort and functionality over objectification and sexualization, we can actively resist these oppressive norms. Feminism does not necessarily require rejecting femininity altogether, but rather about choosing to express ourselves in ways that prioritize our comfort, agency, and autonomy. Ultimately, the goal is to create a world where all women feel confident, comfortable, and empowered in their bodies and clothing choices, as in actual power to move and participate in everyday life. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I have been thinking about this topic for a while. Someone suggested it a while ago, and it was suggested again in the topic gathering that I was doing. And the reason why it took so long for me to get to it is because I really wanted to do like a video of me making an outfit, because I sew a lot of my own clothes. But I just have not had the time. I'm saving up to leave the country again, and I come home and I do homework and I go to sleep. So we decided to just put it out and go ahead and write the script and go ahead and record. And I did include pictures of me in clothing that I've made over the past couple years. Some of it's older than, like, I don't think I have anything that's really recent, but I think it'd be really hypocritical of me to just say altogether feminine clothing is horrible and bad and fashion is horrible when I love fashion. I watched pretty much every season of Project Runway. I wanted to be a fashion designer when I grew up. I've been sewing since I was like 12. I used to do cosplays every year at Dragon Con. Like, I love clothes. I genuinely do. But I think that's a different kind of love than the people who are going and buying these Shein hauls. And I think that it's also a different kind of love than people who can willy-nilly throw out or consume. When you have to consider every piece of item that you make, when you make your own clothes, for example, you realize how much effort and time goes into making just a shirt. You tend to realize exactly how much labor must go into making those dresses you got for $28. And with the cost of materials and everything, it leaves you wondering how much is the person who made that dress getting paid when it's going to take 3-4 hours to make. And when it comes to feminine clothes in particular, I mean, hell, I love wearing dresses sometimes. I love dressing up. I love doing cosplay. But over the past couple years, I've increasingly only made clothes that I know are comfortable. If I have to think about it too much, if I have to find accessories, if I have to do anything that requires me to think about my outfit beyond putting it on and taking it off, I'm not buying it. And as of right now, I haven't really bought any new clothes. All of my clothes that I have right now are either really old or from my brother, secondhand. And as a result, I've mostly been wearing t-shirts and sweatpants or t-shirts and jeans. And I think that's a really interesting contrast from how I used to dress when I was younger, and I used to really put effort into my appearance. Just for what? To consider my whole appearance all day long? Just to think about how I'm being perceived? Is my makeup changing? Is it getting smeared? I remember going on a date once, and I gave a girl a hug on the way back to her car, and my makeup smeared on her clothes. And the whole time, every time after that, I had to think about how my makeup was looking? Was it staying on? Was it smearing on her? I had to think about just so many things that took up so much of my time and effort, and for what? And so, of course, I'm not saying throw out your whole wardrobe. I'm just saying let's shop more mindfully in the future. And I think we do have a duty not just for women, but for the environment to be mindful about how we shop. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them down below. The keyword for this episode is Dead Island 2, because I am excited to buy the first video game I would have bought in 3 years? I have not bought a new game in 3 years. I'm going to buy this one. If you guys want, I have my Patreon up. I mostly just post the video scripts there. I lied to myself and I thought I was going to do anything more than that because I'm so tired and so busy. But I have that. I have Buy Me a Coffee. And of course, I have the YouTube thingy. Yeah. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.